There's a coordinated attack against children by the GOP at the state level, who have introduced legislation in over 30 US states. As a mother, this has me very concerned. Hi, I'm Namasanan, human touched by the wisdom of the Titan goddess of memory. I was finishing a video on the Notre Dame Cathedral, and this hit my radar hard when a state I'm registered to vote in, North Carolina, decided they want in on this culture war. Today, for simplicity's sake, I will be looking at North Carolina, the state known for its discriminatory bathroom bill, and being told their gerrymandering was unconstitutional, so they had to fix it.
So, what's happening? Well, in the state where it is still legal to marry off a 14-year-old, the GOP has decided that they want to override doctors, medical professionals, and entire psychiatric organizations to save the children.
They are going to finally consider raising the marriage age to 18. In 2021, North Carolina might stop kids who can't consent to what could be looked at as legalized statutory abuse. The topic of the hour, or however long this is going to take to do, are three other bills: SB 515, HB 358, and SB 514. Certain lawmakers are saying they're trying to save the children, but what they're actually mean is they feel that trans people shouldn't exist. In this video, I'm going to explain what the laws are, the larger implication, and what can be done with it, and try to end on some good legislation stuff.
This will be a slightly different format I'm going to try out, where I'm not on the camera a lot in hopes I can get this done quicker.
Anyway, shall we begin?
Part 1, the bills. Legislation number 1 we are going to look at is Senate Bill 515, the Healthcare Heroes Conscious Protection Act. What a mouthful. Introduced by these three white men, Hayes, Daniel, and Sanderson. The basis of this bill is healthcare institutions, practitioners, and even insurance companies can refuse service to individuals whose lifestyle goes against their religion, which I hope is self-explanatory why that is bad, because if I'm a nurse and my religion says, if you're a Christian, I can't help you or your child, who you have just discovered has a peanut allergy and could die, and you've shown up in my ER, I can refuse you care. Potentially more disturbing is if we are to follow the money and look at the public records available on North Carolina's State Board of Elections, and then search Hayes' political campaign. In 2020, he received $5,400 from Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, $1,000 from North Carolina Nurses, $4,000 from United Health Group Incorporated, and $1,000 from CVS. So yeah, that kind of sucks for the entire LGBTQ plus umbrella, plus other minorities that the bill is financially backed by. And these companies who, if this is passed, could deny them services. On the same day these men introduced SB 515, they also introduced SB 514, the Youth Health Protection Act, which is defining youth to be up to the age of 21, so that change with upping the age for marriage to 18 needs a bit of a rewrite. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. What exactly are they protecting? Gender-affirming healthcare for anyone under the age of 21. These senators have decided to bravely step in and say they should be allowed to dictate what health professionals are allowed to give their patients. If a healthcare professional gives any transition-related care, such as puberty blockers, which have long been studied for precocious puberty, which is when puberty begins in children under the age of 8 and 9, they could receive a hefty fine and lose their license. Medical professionals have been saying that gender-affirming care saves lives, but I mean, why listen to the experts when you've got these dudes who probably decided they were smarter than the American Academy of Pediatrics? For people who often advocate for less government control, they sure do want to control people's bodies. This idea that they are protecting kids who might get hurt by taking puberty blockers doesn't even consider the trans kids who will be hurt by not having access to them. And it's still perfectly legal for parents, without the consent of their young child, to have invasive surgeries done on them if that child is intersex and their genitalia does not perfectly match their assigned sex. Trans kids do not get surgeries when they are in elementary school. I figured I'd mention that just in case anyone is assuming that this is a thing that happens. Other problematic things with this bill is government employees have to do a sort of mandate reporting. Public school teachers, counselors, and administration would be required to report any student who exhibited symptoms of gender dysphoria, gender nonconformity, or otherwise demonstrates a desire to be treated in a manner incongruent with the minor's sex.
Kids should feel safe at school and be able to talk honestly with their teachers and counselors, not to mention like a social worker that might show up at the door for whatever reason.
The language here is also really vague. What is gender nonconformity? Does that mean a woman wearing jeans and a plaid shirt or a man wearing a pink shirt? Who gets to decide how a person gets to express their gender? For those who have never lived in North Carolina, and I'm not saying all North Carolina is like this, but the part I lived in was, there were a lot of people who took issues to my rainbow hair. I got asked if I knew tattoos were permanent. A lot. People would glare at me for stepping out in public. A friend visited me from Virginia and told me she saw more Confederate flags driving to my place than she did her entire life living in Texas. I lived in Florida as well, and I will say, for all its problems, I never got handed a flyer to join the local KKK group at the mall 2 weeks before Christmas. I digress. There are a lot of issues with this bill. The last one that I would like to discuss is how it's promoting and protecting conversion therapy for those gender nonconforming youth. For those of you who thought that was a thing of the past when the LGBTQ+ got all their rights with being allowed to marry the people they love, I'd like to remind you that this state allows adults to marry 14-year-olds because the child became pregnant. Conversion therapy was banned in 2019, but they are trying to bring it back for gender issues. The practice, as an update for those who are wondering, it includes rejection, shame, and psychological abuse, and can range from extreme electroshock treatments or institutionalization to counseling service in hopes to get the child to conform. For those of you saying that they would never do electroshock treatments on kids, I would like to inform you that North Carolina is very much in favor of electroconvulsive therapy. Duke University actually has a display case with all the old equipment, and doctors can get a 3-week training course in how to use it. Discussion for another time. Now, let's move on to HB 358, introduced March 23, 2021 by Representatives Boyd, McElrath, Wheatley, and Dixon. It is called the Save Women's Sports Act. Several other House members signed on to support this bill as well because for some reason they care about women's sports in elementary, middle, high school, and college. The bill is written to ban trans female students, non-binary, and those who are intersex from participating in sports that are labeled as girls only. One of my favorite quotes in this bill is, "Whereas, while classifications based on sex are generally disfavored, the United States Supreme Court has recognized that sex classifications may be used to compensate women for particular economic disabilities they have suffered, to promote equal employment opportunity, and to advance full development of talent and capacities of our nation's people. United States versus Virginia, 518 U.S. blah 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 blah." The Supreme Court decision forced this all-male school to allow women to join. It was the Virginia Military Institute. I guess they're trying to suggest that sports shouldn't be gendered at all? No, of course not. It hurts cis women when policies are put into place to exclude trans women because then girls are subjected to invasive tests when they are seen to be too masculine, too good. They can't possibly be real women. Public school is hard enough. Now you're going to be teaching kids to watch out for the tomboys. Might have a little too much testosterone in them. Isn't it really invasive to have a doctor's note that says, why yes, this 10-year-old child does have the right chromosomes to play on the girls' softball team? Even the NCAA believes that it does more harm than good, releasing a statement on April 12th saying they firmly and unequivocally supports the opportunity opportunity for transgender student athletes to compete in college sports. And they won't go where these laws are in place. It's actually why one of the states where a similar bill like this was passed, the governor vetoed it and then passed an executive order to keep it from happening. People are mad at her for giving in to big corporation bullies, but like in America, corporations are people with more rights than the average citizen. I put this at the end instead of the beginning mainly because I happen to be one of those people who ended up tuning out a bunch of sports bans because I didn't think it mattered. I don't follow sports. The youth sports here typically are not divided by gender that I know of, not in North Carolina. I don't live there right now, and my middle school daughter is into dancing and skateboarding, not really sports team things. Dancing is an entirely different ballgame.
It was very selfish of myself for, not paying attention, since a lot of wiser individuals who happen to be trans kept saying that this is bad thing. We need to pay attention and stop this now. This is why you should listen to people who are trans and not just cis women like me, because sometimes I might miss how important an issue is. Because obviously it was a warning, because now these individuals are trying to figure out just how much they can get away with.
Part 2. Why now?
Get a flyer from a KKK group. That also happened. Hello, Kat. She is here. Okay.
Conservatives tend to wish for a world that is traditional and will say they want less regulation, though often fight for regulations of people's bodies. Abortion bans, civil rights, gay marriage, destroying the sanctity of the institution. They like the white nuclear family, where everyone knows their place and the woman's is barefoot in the kitchen and pregnant. Well, they've, so far at least, lost a lot of ground with people becoming aware that LGBTQ+ people exist, deserve the same rights as them, and throw rainbow parades celebrating this. North Carolina senators who support the anti-trans legislation also introduced the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which I laughed at and didn't take seriously because babies are born alive. Why are we referring to them as survivors? If an abortion results in the live birth of an infant, the infant is a legal person for all purposes under the laws of North Carolina and entitled to all the protections of such laws. This is fear-mongering. Though more sinister is the fact most people don't read definitions unless you're like me and see homo capitalized. This one says, born alive. With respect to a member of the species Homo sapiens, the term means the complete expulsion or extraction from his or her mother of that member at any stage of development. That's right, any type of abortion is murder. It's ridiculousness that has a far darker underbelly to it, because this entire bill is suggesting that any type of medical procedure that aids in the removal of cells, a fetus, is murder. There's a pattern here: anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-domestic violence protection, anti-immigration, anti-help poverty. But my religious freedom is under attack. All go hand in hand. A state who did pass the sports ban was Arkansas.
Why is this one Kansas, but this one is not Arkansas? America, explain! Explain! What do you mean in Arkansas?
Despite having no cases in Arkansas of this being an issue, they passed their law of doctors being able to refuse to do their job because they might catch the gay and go to hell. Then, even though the Republican governor vetoed their law on banning gender-affirming care, these lawmakers overturned it. Now, if you're under 18 in Arkansas, even if you were already taking the medication, it is now illegal. These lawmakers are going to get kids killed.
Just after this bill passed the House, these kids heard about it. I've had multiple kids in our emergency room because of an attempted suicide. just in the last week. Multiple. I've had multiple children. Do you know how many phone calls I've had to field in the last week of children calling me saying, Dr. Hutchison, if this happens, I'm going to kill myself. I guarantee you, if this bill passes, children will die, and I will call you guys every single time one does.
All right, thank you for your testimony.
They don't care because they don't think trans people should exist.
Coming back to North Carolina, I would like to point out it is the state that passed the infamous bathroom bill. If you remember, which to be fair, there are legislators who are trying to get rid of the bill altogether. More on that later. It's like one of those strange things that even the guy that introduced the bill had absolutely no idea how to enforce it. And cis women who might not look like whatever a real woman should look like were the ones to suffer the most. Are you what a real woman should look like, Bob?
All of these bills all over the country are a coordinated attack. For those who also follow any of the anti-abortion laws that kept on popping up in like 2017, 2018, they might remember that one of the goals was to get these laws pushed through so high that it could go up against the Supreme Court and get Roe v. Wade overturned. Some of the same tactics are being used here. Since the Supreme Court did state that people could not be fired for their sexual orientation or gender identity, now they feel threatened and managed to get that uber religious judge that believes sexual orientation is a preference put into place. Great. The backbone of many of the anti-LGBTQ legislations come from a group called Alliance Defending Freedom, which is ironic since they're not really defending freedom. They're defending religious freedom, and only one type of religious freedom, if you know what I mean. A freedom that sees marriage to be only between a man and a woman. As you can see on their website, they believe gay marriage is disintegrating society. And look at the bottom of the page. Under marriage is the fight for trans students to be banned from sports. Yay! Wow. Media Matters created an interactive book explaining their positions that is well documented with a link down below. But just to go over a couple of the things they've done, they've supported criminalizing sodomy, which, by the way, is still on the books in North Carolina. Sodomy is still a thing that is illegal there. Defended Don't Ask, Don't Tell, promoted the homosexual agenda to Christians, touts all sorts of anti-trans propaganda. It's pro-conversion therapy, wants to criminalize parents who support their kids, something they're trying to do in Texas. Thinks LGBTQ plus kids shouldn't be adopted, and has millions of dollars plus lawyers to help their powerhouse keep going. Yes. Another group really pushing these issues is the Family Research Group, who, in their statement on sexuality, explicitly state, Family Research Council believes the context for the full expression of human sexuality is within the bonds of marriage between one man and one woman. We believe that objective, immutable biological sex is a more fundamental way of determining an individual's identity than subjective, changeable psychological gender identity, and therefore biological sex at birth should be the only such marker used by governments at any level for any purpose. Gosh, some of these people. One of the ideas that both these groups have is that if you separate the T from the LGB, then you'll be able to destroy it. So if you're part of the rainbow but think that this doesn't affect you, just keep in mind these groups who are pushing these laws will also be coming for your rights. And if you're pro-choice, they're also pushing to make sure their religious freedom is more important than your bodily autonomy. According to the New York Times reporter Jeremy W. Peters, this sudden push has been brought about by a coordinated and poll-tested campaign by social conservative organizations like the American Principles Project and Concerned Women for America, which say they are determined to move forward with what may be one of their last footholds in the fight against expanding LGBTQ rights. I looked up these groups as well, and yeah, they're pretty gross, so I'm not even going to put it on the screen. It's the same religious talking points, just multiplied. It sucks because it is kids that will suffer from this. This just gives people a reason to hate. Maybe we need to rebrand the expanding LGBTQ rights, because I guess people feel like they have to lose something for others to gain. I'm not positive. That is just a guess. Like, you fight for one group's rights so that everyone can have more rights. Multiple studies have come out that gender-affirming care is what saves kids, and trying to change them can lead to the kids dying. Just because these people want trans kids to disappear doesn't mean they will. Countless studies, recent studies, have come out to support this. If you don't want kids to hurt themselves or commit suicide, then we need more gender-affirming care, not withholding care. As Jennifer Finley Boylan points out in her opinion piece for the New York Times, trans people have been part of human history for as long as there has been history, and for as long as there have been humans. But with the expectation of a few brave souls, until relatively recently, trans individuals were rarely in the public eye in the United States. People knew so little about us that when I came out at the turn of the millennium, at least one person I tried to explain myself to thought that I'd invented the whole business single-handedly. In retrospect, my transition was made somewhat easier in 2000 because there weren't quite so many laws designed to make my life harder. Conservatives didn't seem to fully understand that they were supposed to hate us. Part 3, what you can do and some good news. I have 2 theories for North Carolina of why these bills came out the way they did.
One is by making it as outrageous as they possibly can, they can take back some of the language to try and come to a compromise, which I would say that there is nothing that can be compromised on. You cannot compromise when it comes to people's lives. Like, you can't say, okay, we will take out the teachers having to report or lower the age to 18. No compromises when it's people's lives at stake. Period.
My other theories is because there are some good legislators which have been pushing bills that protect trans rights, like the full repeal of the bathroom bill. These same legislators also introduced a bill that said people won't be able to defend their use of violence or murder because they perceived a person was a different gender, the "I was tricked" argument. And they also introduced a Mental Health Protection Act, which says gender identity and sexual orientation are not mental health issues, but saying they are does hurt people. Also, conversion therapy bad. None of that. They are also wanting to expand equality rights for minorities and finally adopt the Equal Rights Amendment, which still hasn't been passed yet, even though everyone seems to think there are equal rights. Bad GOP. To combat this, the GOP had to go all out. And I think we should talk equally about the good bills as well as sound the alarm on the bad. But this video is already well over the allotted time I had it planned for. I meant for it only to be 10 minutes long. What you can do if you live in North Carolina is write to your representative. Or hell, all the representatives that you would like this bill and other bills to die. Also, write of your support of the other ones I mentioned. Tell people to vote yes on those. I'll have links to all of this stuff and things down below. And if you're not in North Carolina, check to see if your state is trying to sneak in legislation of this nature. Like I said before, coordinated attack. They're trying to start a culture war. Most trans people would just like to have the same rights as everyone else. They're not trying to go to war with anyone.
This entire ordeal actually forced me to explain to my youngest kid, who is non-binary trans, that there are bad people in the world, or at least people with bad intentions. Somehow, really loving your child makes them not understand that people hate them for existing. They started to cry and said they wanted to write letters to all of these people who were hurting kids everywhere they could. Really, they wanted to make a YouTube video, but with all the hate towards trans kids going on right now, I'm being extra protective. However, you know, keep on fighting. Thanks for watching. Make sure you are writing senators, legislators. Let's stop this madness. Well, I guess I'm supposed to just say subscribe and all that jazz. Yep. Oh, put the hat on Bob.